expectations conversation, I know I've experienced a lot of, maybe I should say, I've designed a lot of pain in my life because I failed to communicate expectations or understand expectations. And I learned a lot from those things. And so on your path, which is a pretty amazing path, like I just want to learn more about you because there's so much there in your energy. What can you think of a significant learning you had as a result of a painful misstep?
There's a million. I've screwed so much stuff up. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I've tried to change is that when the world presents you with a lesson, take it. Take it and treasure it. Because if you don't, you're going to get it again and again until you finally learn the lesson. If I'm totally honest, it's usually the third time that I get hit upside the head with a 2x4 that I'm finally like, oh, maybe I should duck. I can hear it. I can see it. I can feel the wind moving. It's time to duck.
Yeah.
And from a Firestop perspective, I think the one that will resonate best for anybody that's tuning in to hear about Firestop is that the most important thing that you can do on a project before anybody punches a hole in any of your fire rated walls, have a plan. Have a plan for what you're going to do. Sit down and look at where are your fire rated assemblies. What are they? Is it a wood frame project? Is it a hollow core concrete floor? Is it a fluted metal deck? Fill in the blank. What is that? And then step number 2, look at your fire rated walls. Are they concrete? Are they block? Are they gypsum? What do your shaft walls look like? And are they different from your regular fire rated walls? Do you have access to both sides? Because if you don't, how are you going to fire stop both sides of the wall? And if it's a shaft wall and it's block, do you have access to fire stop inside the wall? If not, you need a detail that tells you how to fire stop it from one side. And if it's a penetration through your shaft wall, are you fire stopping it at the shaft liner and then again at the finish side?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, the number one most important element of a building is not fire stop.
Ooh.
It's the structural integrity of the building. Because if the building can't stand up, who cares if it lights on fire? People will die. And that the condo project in Miami is a horrifying example.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes.
The structural integrity of the building is paramount. After that, the second thing is still not fire stop. It's the integrity of your shaft assemblies, because if fire gets in to your shaft assemblies, it has access to every single floor that shaft passes through. After that comes fire stop. In my opinion. And I'm not trying to say that fire stopping is more important than fire sprinklers. Fire sprinklers is one trade. Fire alarms is another trade that's tangentially connected, right? Fire stopping impacts every major trade on your project.
Every single one.
So whether you hire a specialty contractor to do it, guess what? That doesn't mean that your trades don't have to pay attention to fire stop. And maybe they're not paying attention to fire stop specifically, but a pre-construction meeting that sits down and says, okay, plumber, what size holes are you putting for this pipe? If that's a plastic pipe versus a metal pipe, the answer is going to be very different.
Yes.
It might be the same, but your parameters are going to be very different. And then the larger your plastic pipe gets, the more critical your annular space becomes.
Yes.
And then, oh, that pipe, guess what? We forgot. We want to put insulation on it. So then what happens? You got a rated wall, your pipe is going through the rated wall, and the hole is big enough to accommodate the pipe, but not the insulation.
Yep.
So the insulators come through, they put the insulation up, and then Bubba comes along with the fire stop. And Bubba fire stops the insulation to the wall. And then if there's a fire, the insulation is going to burn, and then there's no fire stop around that pipe going through the wall. And there's a million other things that you could add in. We're not just picking on the plumbers. I can pick on the electricians. The electricians have the biggest, most complex scope when it comes to fire stop as anybody out there.
Yes. The cable trays. I still can't figure out, like, how do you, I've seen it. Looks good. But I'm just like, man, there ain't no way that's going to hold.
That's the first thing, right?
Yeah.
So take a list of all of your fire rated assemblies, your floors and your walls, then compare that to what sort of fire stop penetrations do you have? And then identify what size openings you need. But then if you really want to take it a step further, let's say you're working in a hospital. A hospital is going to have a smoke barrier wall. And here's something that gets really confusing. The codes have changed. So the old codes, and I don't mean the legacy codes like before the 2000 IBC, I'm talking about the early IBC, there was no such thing as a smoke barrier wall. Then the smoke barrier wall came into the codes, but it wasn't required to be rated. And then all of a sudden, it's got to be rated. So all of these changes lead to the confusion.
Yes.
But if anybody's working in a project that has a smoke barrier, now you need to take a minute and understand that smoke barrier is required by the code to have what's called an L rating. So what they do is they install the fire stop, and before they put it on the furnace and burn it, they assess it to see how much air will go through. So they look at it from whatever the ambient temperature is in the room. So if you're in Texas in the summertime or Chicago in the wintertime, ambient's going to be different. Then they do an elevated, like 400 degrees above ambient, and they look to see how much air will go through it. And that gives you an L rating. So if you're working on a project that has smoke barriers, you need to sit down and figure out, here's your head of wall joint, what's the L rating, and what does the code say I can have? What are my penetrations, and what does the code say I can have for that? Or if you look at a project that has movement requirements, this is something that I would love to have somebody say, Sharron, I listened to the podcast and I tried this. And I'll warn you, this is a pain in the ass, but so important. If you have a project and your structural designer says there will be movement in this building, duh. So let's say, for the sake of the discussion, it's going to be a ½ inch of movement. Somebody needs to have a conversation with your mason and your drywaller to identify what size gap are you going to have in there to accommodate that ½ inch movement.
Yes.
But if it's a fire rated wall, now you have to take that conversation a step further and talk to your Firestop installer and say, what's your Firestop detail?
Yeah.
And does that detail allow for the movement and the joint size? And if you've got,
otherwise it breaks the seal, and then you have air passage, and then the fire goes where it wants to go.
and understanding, the other thing is, if you've got a larger joint and you've got mineral wool, the mineral wool compression, there's a formula for it. It's in the UL has a BRGN document, and it's right there. And it's really easy to figure out, and it's really important that it gets figured out. So that would be the one takeaway, is plan your fire stop early. And that little free training, that last little snippet goes over exactly step 1, step 2, step 3, go through this, do that.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, call me. Or call your favorite fire stop manufacturer.
There you go.
And just say, hey, look, we've got this project. We want a single source, fill in the blank with your favorite fire stop manufacturer, and talk to them and say, come onto the job site and help my trades figure this out.
Yes.
I'm happy to help you too, but I'm going to charge you. But talk to your favorite fire stop manufacturer. And if you don't have a favorite fire stop manufacturer, make some phone calls, get one.
Yeah.